Well, hello there. Thanks for joining me. I am Dr. Jen, and I'm so pleased you've joined me for today's show. One of the biggest questions I see on social media and I get comments on is asking about property managers. How do you decide if you need one? What if you do need one? How do you hire one? And then what do you do if you have to have the awkward conversation with your property manager if they're not performing? Even more awkward, what happens if your property manager fires you? here today, here today to talk about all things property management is Spencer Sutton from Evernest Property Management. Welcome, Spencer. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Jen. Great to be here.
Excellent. Well, so tell us, what is Evernest? What is that?
Yeah, great question. So we're one of the nation's largest, what we call, we're single or scatter site property management companies. So this is for single family residential, and we also do small to medium size multifamily as well. So we are managing properties in around 20,000 properties in 50 markets across the country.
Wow. Wow. And what is it that you do for Evernest? Are you a property manager?
Well, I've worn a lot of the hats when I started, which was 11 years ago, but I'm the VP of marketing for Evernest. So I come from an investor background, and it just makes sense that I can help craft the messaging that reaches to both landlords and what we would call or consider like reluctant landlords or accidental landlords. So they're two little bit different messages, but that's what I do on my day-to-day basis here.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. And Evernest is in multiple locations, right? You're not just in one
hmm
place?
Yeah, we started in Birmingham, Alabama. So kind of the quick story is Matthew Whitaker and I, Matthew's our CEO, founder and CEO. He and I were selling houses here in Birmingham, Alabama. We were wholesaling houses, flipping houses, and it was great. Like we were doing this from 2003 all the way to 2008, and then we had the great financial crisis. And when the great financial crisis came, our business, our wholesaling and flipping business blew up. He had about 30 rental houses. He went and started Evernest as a property management company, really kind of as a turnkey provider. Like he was going to buy, fix, and sell and then manage properties. And I had about 30 rental houses. And so eventually I gave my rental houses to Evernest. So I became a client. I was a self-managing landlord for many years. And then I hired Evernest in 2008. And then I came on board to run the marketing in 2014. But yeah, we started in Birmingham and went to Nashville, Chattanooga, Little Rock. And then now we're in 50 markets everywhere from San Francisco, Los Angeles, all the way to parts of Virginia.
Excellent. So you mentioned before you do single family homes, scatter site,
hmm
small and
hmm
medium multifamily, but you don't do big multifamily
We
complexes.
do we actually do have a couple of bigger complexes in Chicago and Phoenix. So we do have, I think, a couple of them are like 100 or 200 unit. So we do have on-site management. It's just not something that we've done for a super long time. We just started this year, but we do manage some larger ones. But just in those two cities, just in Phoenix and Chicago.
Gotcha. 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 Okay. Excellent. So now you told me something really interesting and full transparency. We have a mutual friend,
That's
Krista,
right. That's
who's
right.
been on the podcast multiple times, and I know that listeners will recognize her.
hmm
She's out of Denver and has done 2 episodes all about fair housing and animals, and she's the one that coined the
She's
phrase
fantastic.
freeloading animals, and she's fantastic. And so she had messaged me saying, "Hey Jen, you need to have Spencer on your show from Evernest to talk about property management and other things." So, but you had told me when we were just chatting mostly about Krista, but other stuff as well, that Evernest also supports other property managers. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so well, we do that mainly through education. So we are
Okay.
we're big in NARPM, which is the National Association of Residential Property Managers. It's like a national association, and we learned a lot from people. Like we were taught a whole bunch. It's an incredible community of like-minded property managers across the country, and we learned so much from these people as we were kind of early in our business, early growing the business. And so we've seen a big need to give back and really kind of help professionalize this industry because as many people probably listening know that most property managers, when they think about them, they're kind of like mom and pop, operators. A lot of them are old school, and which is great. But we do a lot of education. So we have a podcast where we just talk about how to grow their property management company. We speak regularly on the NARPM circuit. We've done many webinars for property managers. Our whole thing is we just want to give back because we were given so much when we were young in our careers and young in our business. And so we want to do whatever we can to help other property managers make great decisions, have great businesses, have fantastic clients and residents and just really just prosper all the way around.
Awesome. Awesome. So how does Evernest onboard new landlord clients? If
Mm.
somebody's a single family homeowner or they've inherited a portfolio of scattered site rentals, how does Evernest even, meet with them and decide to, you know, have them be a client? How do you go through that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really it starts with just a conversation, right? So a lot of the way people find us is they find us through like content. We have an Evernest real estate investor podcast. We have a lot of we have a YouTube video and things. So if once they hear us or kind of find out about us, or they're just searching Google, they'll reach out, and it starts with a conversation. And what I like to say is, when I was trained, I was the salesperson early on. I was probably the only salesperson we had in the company for a long time. And I took hundreds of calls like the one you're talking about. Like the first initial call, hey, I may need a property manager. And a lot of times people don't even know the questions to ask. And so it just starts with a conversation. And it's to me, Jen, it's all about setting expectations because if you're a real estate investor and you have unrealistic expectations, then no property manager you hire is ever going to satisfy you. And I think like I've talked to so many investors, and because I'm an investor myself, like I speak the language. And so I just want to help them. I'm like, listen, let me tell you the if you hire us or you hire somebody else, that's completely up to you. But let's just be very, very clear about the property you own, because we talk about everything from the age of the property, what kind of maintenance you should expect, what kind of resident you should expect in that property. Maybe they've owned it for a long time. So we're just talking about all those things so I can set the proper expectations. I don't want to sell them something that we can't deliver on, and so I think it just starts with that initial conversation. They may ask me questions like, "Well, how many properties do you manage in so and so city?" And what can I expect from how are you going to contact me about repairs and maintenance? What about inspections? Do you do inspections? How do you screen your residents? Those are all very, very good questions. But to me, it starts with like, what is the ultimate expectation that you have from a property manager? Because we found if if you're an investor and you want to be involved in every single decision, then that's probably not a great client for us and probably not a great client for anybody, honestly. You need to self-manage, right? So if you're
Right.
if you're like in the nitty-gritty and have to be involved in every single decision, then just self-manage. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I self-managed for a long time, but I did it because I lived in the city and I was in these areas all the time. And because I bought in Class C areas, it took a little bit more of my time and attention than if I had bought in Class A neighborhoods or Class B neighborhoods, kind of set it and forget it. So a lot of it just kind of depends on the situation of the investor.
So if they're high touch, high engagement, they want a phone
Mhm.
call every 5 minutes on anything. Well, that sounds like they should. I agree. It sounds like they should just self manage and educate themselves along the way. But if they
It really,
are, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say it really slows down the service that we can provide the resident, right? So if we
Right.
get a maintenance call because the toilet stopped up and it's backed up or whatever, and we like, do we really have to call you as the owner and say, hey, can we go out and take a look at this and fix this? If it does, then guess what? The resident gets frustrated. And what that means to you as the landlord, as a property owner, is that you're probably not going to keep that resident long. If there's delays, they end up blaming us, which is perfectly fine. Like that we signed up for it. They blame us for not coming to their, not helping them soon enough. And then it just delays everything. And guess what? You get a vacancy, you get a turn costs money, vacancy costs money, screening residents costs money. So
Yeah.
if it's $100 fix, $200 fix, just let your property manager go out and handle that and communicate with you afterwards about, hey, what was done. I think ultimately you just have to trust who you hire. And if you don't trust, then it's going to be a really rough relationship. And that's what we figured out is like, hey, if we can execute really well and if we can communicate very well, then we'll have happy clients and happy residents. Those are the two things that make a great property management company: execution and communication.
Love it. I find I'm a great big nerd, and I am deep into research with Harvard joint studies for housing, and then also with Canadian Mortgage Housing Corporation. They do national studies, and then they do state or provincial studies, sometimes metropolis. And it seems that one of the top three reasons, let's say, that tenants leave is because there is a delay or lack of engagement regarding maintenance requests. And so speed of engagement. And I always tell our tenants, look, if you really want to see us drop everything and come running, tell us there's a problem regarding some kind of water, like there's a water leak or something.
Right.
I said, we will
Right.
literally drop everything, get in the car and come over, because
Right.
that can cause the most damage. So I agree with you, is that if someone is trying to do high touch stuff, that is going to slow down the speed of engagement, and ultimately it's going to cost a lot of money. That, let the expert be the expert, and this is why, folks would call Evernest to hire you, right? So
Sure.
um
Yeah, they're kind of tired of it. I would even say you as a landlord slash investor, the best scenario is if you're not hearing from us, right? If you
right,
hear from us once a month and it's the owner statement, it's your statement. Hey, here's the money we put in your account. Here's our management of fee. And if this just happens month after month, the crazy thing is, Jen, when I was managing my own properties and I placed a resident hastily. Like I got very impatient and I was tired of driving out to the property and showing the property. And so what I did was I let my guard down and uh, I I didn't follow the screening procedure that I should have. And so I let somebody in my house that I shouldn't have. They paid me a couple months up front. I thought, hey, I've got a little bit of money and I finally got a resident. I can breathe a little bit. Well, they ended up not paying. I had to go through the whole eviction process. And that's when I just decided it's not worth it. I would rather hire Evernest because my buddy Matthew Whitaker, I mean, it was brand new business, but I trusted Matthew. Again, it kind of goes back to trust. I said, man, I trust you with this. Take this property, find me a resident. They found the next resident for me in that property. And I kept that resident right around 10 years. And it was the best. Like
wow,
I was like, this is what I want. Like, how do you keep a resident 10 years? You answer maintenance requests, which they did, you provide them a safe and good place to live. And then guess what? You don't bother them a whole bunch, right? Like
right,
great residents don't want to be bothered. They don't
right.
really want to see you coming around all the time. And so
Yeah,
that's part of it.
no, I get it. That's amazing. Well, so what's your take when you've got inherited properties? You've got these new landlords who, they've inherited, a portfolio or something from
Hmm.
their family. Let's say they've had some kind of an estate passed down, and they may or may not be business savvy. And I mean, they just get sort of thrown into it. I mean, we've talked about this term accidental landlord. How does
Hmm.
Evernest support someone calling, calling in going, I just inherited this rental portfolio in, any town, USA.
Yeah.
Now what do I do? I mean, how does Evernest take those calls?
I think that's a great question. I believe that a lot of it is going to depend on a couple of things. Number one, what is the portfolio mix? Like when you say you
Oh,
inherited a portfolio, what do you really mean? Does this mean that you inherited, a group of 10 properties in a really bad part of town, high crime, that type of thing in a rough part of town, or did you inherit 10 properties in a class A, class B? To me, those are two separate conversations
right.
because you need to prepare that accidental landlord for one or the other. Say, okay, you have 10 houses. Let's just take scenario A. You inherited 10 properties in a really rough part of town. It's got high crime and half are filled, half have residents, half are vacant. That's a completely different conversation because you need to let them know, okay, listen, you have 10 houses that are over 100 years old. So I can go ahead and tell you the first thing is you're going to have a lot of maintenance and repairs. Like this is just the case. Oh, by the way, you've got several Section 8 residents, which are fine. We handle Section 8 residents, which are great, not a problem.
Absolutely.
But just know that they live in the house more, right? So they're flushing the commode more, they're flipping light switches more. There's going to be more maintenance and repair with those types of houses. That's a totally different conversation than your average rent is $2,500, $2,800. These houses are relatively new. They were built in 1990 or 2000, and you've got a really great portfolio. They're all rented, and here's the rent roll. If you get us the rent roll, you get us like the leases. We'll help you understand those, and it can really be hands off for the most part if you have a great performing portfolio. If you have a portfolio that's in disrepair and a portfolio that is in chaos, then that's a different discussion and maybe worth looking at. Like, how do you really want to own these? Because whether you do it yourself, manage them yourself, or whether you have a property manager, it's going to be a struggle.
Yeah. I've heard that from other people too, as people who become accidental landlords and they're inheriting these different properties. It's, you need to zoom out and go, how does this fit your long-term goal as a human? Not just, hey,
Right.
I got these properties and I want to try to hire a property manager. It's, how does this align with my trajectory of, my future, my family's future, all of these different things. But there's more and more people who are getting into real estate now, and a lot of them are doing on a shoestring budget. A lot of them are undercapitalized. I'm seeing this lots in the different social media forums on Facebook and LinkedIn and other places, and I'm seeing them going, how can they do this and how can they do that? And they're trying to get a lot of stuff for free. I understand they may not have the
Hmm.
money. What's your take? If you've got somebody who just did it, let's say they're doing a B, what are they, BRRR, where,
A
fix,
burr.
fix, you're not flipping, but you're going to fix it and then
Yeah.
you're going to stabilize it and then you're going to put a management company in. So if that call is to Evernest, and let's say this is their very first house that they have on a shoestring budget, put everything in, maybe it's got a tenant, let's say it has a tenant, and then they're calling you guys. What's your take on that if they're undercapitalized and they're newbie?
I've had so many of those conversations, Jen. Like I
Okay.
cannot tell you. I'll never forget going to dinner with an investor. He was from California and he wanted to buy properties in Birmingham, and we went and had dinner, and we just sat there, and he at first had been talking about buying one property at a time, and then he said, "Hey, listen, we're going to raise money with some friends and family, and we're going to buy a portfolio of 10 houses. I know this person who's selling them." He said, "Spencer, would you do that if you were me?" And I said, "Absolutely not." And partly the reason why I'm telling you this is because A, he was brand new, didn't really know what he was getting himself into, and B, these properties were all in, class C, class D areas. And I said, I just don't think that's a good idea. He bought those properties, and come to find out, he was undercapitalized, even though he had raised money. As soon as he bought these 10 properties, guess what? Four people turned in notice to move out. And so he had four vacancies. Well, when you buy properties that already have residents in them, then guess what? You've got turn cost involved in that. And he didn't really even know what the conditions of these properties were inside. He was buying it based on the cash flow opportunity or what the portfolio was stabilized at, but it wasn't really all that stable. And so he went in and to this day, this was probably 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, he's still trying to sell these properties. And yeah,
Oh
oh yeah, oh yeah,
no.
it turned very much sideways for his partner, and the people that they raised money with, and it's just a complete nightmare. I would rather, I would rather like tell somebody, which I've done this before. I had a group of investors came from Reno, Nevada, and they said, "Hey, we're going to buy. We have $800,000. This is what we plan on buying these, however, 10 properties or whatever it was." They slid the piece of paper across. I said, "Don't buy that one. Don't buy that one. Don't buy that one. Don't buy that one." And I said, as a matter of fact, you need to take your $800,000 and go back to Reno, Nevada, and regroup. I said, you do not want to buy these properties. And I would rather somebody keep their money than get into the business undercapitalized, because it is going to be a painful, painful lesson, because you're going to get behind. And guess what? Not only are you going to have repairs and maintenance, you're going to have CapEx expenditures at some point. You're going to need a new roof. You're going to need a new HVAC. You're going to need a hot water heater. And there's nothing like an HVAC that wipes out, a whole year's worth of cash flow. I mean, it's just, especially with interest rates where they are right now. I mean, it makes it harder. You're going to have to buy a really, really good deal. And so the people that do that, it can still work for them. But again, this kind of comes back to expectations, what we started with, Jen, because I want to have those conversations so that we're not misaligned, and I'm not making you to believe that this is just going to be the most incredible thing in the world. Because really, when you start buying rental property, you're buying a business. Like, this is a business. You have to pay attention. It's not mailbox money and it's not passive income. Even if you have a property manager, you're going to have to be making decisions, and you have to treat it like a business. So
Yeah.
that's my rant. As you can tell, I'm kind of passionate about this because I've talked to so many people about this very thing. And I just like
Yeah.
to be very transparent. I don't want to sell Evernest, because I set Evernest up as in a really bad position if I sell really hard and say, "Oh, we're going to make it all better." We cannot overcome your bad decisions. There's nothing we can do to overcome an investor's bad decisions. That's why those expectations need to be set right out of the gate.
I think it's a very prudent way to look at it. And just before we started recording, we were talking about not only the landlord trying to screen the property manager, but the property manager is also looking right back at the landlord and go, can I even work with this person? Right? I mean, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned, as much as I am screening my tenants, I encourage them to screen me back because it's a business relationship. So let's
Right.
talk about how in any business you have permission to fire your clients.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the indicators that you see in Evernest where you kind of go, they're starting to kind of go sideways and maybe we can't work with them? Is what are some of the things that might lead Evernest to firing a client?
Well, I will say this. Let me start by saying, usually, if you are interviewing a property manager and they're relatively young in the business, they will take anybody. And it only takes for them to kind of get established and get where like their feet under them. Then they start to realize they're spending 80% of their time with 20% of the clients that are giving them the biggest headache. And then if that's you, you're going to be on the chopping block, right? So it is
Yeah.
like I just interviewed a property manager not long ago, and every year he was a COO of a 1200, they manage 1200 doors in a market, and it's which is pretty large for any single market. And he said every year they would sit down and they would fire 10 clients every single year. At the very end of the year, they would just what is going on, what is happening, who's causing the biggest problems. So I think some of the indicators are, we've already mentioned one, that they want to be involved in every decision and they
Right.
question every single thing that you do. They want to get on a call every single time there's a maintenance issue that has to be addressed or has to be solved. Again, this kind of comes back to trust. If they don't trust you, they're going to really want to get on the phone and talk to you. So if you don't have trust with that person, If you feel like you don't trust your property manager, look out because they may not trust you and they may want to let you go. Another indication is what we just talked about, which is being undercapitalized.
Mm.
And, we carried, I remember for the longest time, we carried about $100,000 of debt, owner debt, what we called owner debt. This is cash they owed us. We would
That
carry
was
that.
very nice of you guys.
Right? Yeah.
Very
It's
nice
not
that
what
you
we
gave them
wanted
a
to
hundred
do.
thousand dollar loan.
Yeah, it's essentially, and for a long time it was interest free because we would reach out to the owner and we'd say, "Hey, there your air conditioner, we have fixed this thing and it's dead. It's 20 years old and it's July. You have to do something." Well, I don't have $5,000. I don't have 5,000. Well, guess what? We're going to put this air conditioner in because it's for the safety of the resident,
Right.
and just know that you're going to have to pay for that. Okay, okay. And we put it in, and then we're collecting rent. So guess what? That rent every month is paying that debt down. And so
Wow.
that was really the only reason it ever made sense is because we're collecting the rent. And if they owed us $2,000, $3,000, $5,000, we would just use that to pay off the debt. But eventually we just probably about 8 years ago, we sent everybody a letter and said, "Hey, we're not a bank. And
Yeah.
if you have to use us as a bank, then we're going to charge you interest. And here's the interest
a-
rate." You know,
Absolutely.
but that's kind of one of the telltale signs is somebody who's undercapitalized and probably should have never have bought property or bought real estate. They are going to find themselves without a property manager, or they just have to go find another one.
That's
And I
amazing.
would say if you find yourself, if you've had 3 or 4 property managers, the problem is probably not them, it might be you. And so just be really honest with yourself about like, how am I as an owner, and what am I really expecting these property managers to do for me? I think, some property managers are great, like boutique property managers. You may have the owner's cell phone number. You can text them. They're the one managing the property. They're like they're putting signs in the yard. They're meeting residents, showing them the property. That is a very boutique property management company. That's just the small mom and pop. And you're going to get personalized service from that person. They're not going to have a lot of great, probably, processes in place, and there are some disadvantages of that, but some people probably like that a lot. And some
Hmm.
like a more professional property manager like Evernest or other ones. I mean, in every city we're in, there are fantastic managers. I would say they're probably not going to hold your hand like that and be the mom and
Yeah.
pop that they give you their cell phone number.
Right. Of course. Yeah, it's really interesting to business is such it's a relationship industry in general. I mean, it's all about communication. It's all about, can I work with this person? And there's a lot of things where, that there's a saying that if the entire class fails, maybe it's not the students, right? And so
Right. That's
right?
right.
And
Yeah.
so if a landlord is going through property manager after property manager, maybe it's not the property managers. Yeah.
And also, if you think about it, if you're a landlord, if you're an investor and your property manager, let's just say you have one property or however many, and they keep turning over residents every single
Mhm.
year, maybe it's the property manager, right? So maybe like you will never make money if you're turning residents every 12 months.
No way.
You want to keep a great resident long term, and at least you want to keep them 3 years, 4 years maybe. And so if you have a property manager that it seems to always turn over residents, it may be them, and it may be just that the resident is that they're none of them are happy with the service that they provide. And you can go look at like 5-star reviews. I'll just be honest with you. Property management is a grind. It's not a fun business. Nobody has ever grown up that I've ever known. Nobody's grown up and said, "I can't wait to be a property manager." They usually fall into it, or they inherit their parents' business.
Right.
And like ours was born out of the great financial crisis. Like it was born
Yeah.
out of necessity. Our business went away. We had to do something with all these rentals, and so it's just a grind whether you're doing it property management is a grind or whether you hire somebody, it's just a rough business. There's nobody is patting any property managers on the back and saying, "Hey, great job for collecting my rent." Nobody does that, and no resident is patting you on the back. So I'd say go look at 5-star reviews. That helps give you an indication of what the residents and what the owners think. Residents are going to be
Mm-hmm.
the loudest though. They'll hop on a Google review quicker than anybody.
Right, right. Okay, hang on a second.
Sure.
Oh my Lord, hang on, hang on, hang on.
Okay.
Um, the tender was just hitting the boat so hard, like it may have
I saw it rocking.
it may have hit the boat. So anyway, that's okay. We're almost done.
Do you
I
need to
just
go? Do you need to go? Do you need to go check
no,
something?
I'm okay. I'm okay. This is
Okay.
just the
Okay.
this is
This is
recording a
part of the.
podcast. This is part of
Yeah.
it while we're underway. So my
Right.
last question, I talk a lot
Uh-huh.
about best practices as a landlord, as property managers, because many tenants are aging in place and ultimately may die in the unit. And so what's
Mhm.
Evernest's take on preparing for people who are aging? Emergency
Mm.
contacts, failing tenants, health and wellness checks. How does Evernest approach that?
Yeah, we want to be like we trust our property managers to have a really good sense of the people that they're putting in the residence. Like if we do have an elderly person, we want to make sure that we do have emergency contacts in case something happens. It has happened before. I'm sure it'll happen again. I've owned rental property myself where the resident passed away in the rental property, and so it's something that does happen. It's unfortunate. So I just think, we're not doing going and doing wellness checks on necessarily on residents. We do inspections. What we have found is that residents we used to do quarterly inspections of the property, and residents felt like we were invading their privacy a little bit because it's, every quarter.
That's often.
It's often, our owners loved it because they're like, we want eyeballs. We want your eyeballs on our property all the time, which was great. And it's
Yeah.
good for spotting the deferred maintenance that maybe a resident doesn't really care about. And we were like, hey,
Mm-hmm.
this could be a problem long term.
Mm-hmm.
But we cut that down. We did it twice a year. Now we do it once a year. But I do think it's just something you should, if you know your residents, you should be very, very prepared and conscious about, having that contact information. Is there anybody in town that is checking on them? That might be
Mm-hmm.
something else I would figure out. If they're all alone in the city and everybody lives a long way away, then maybe you do want to have your property manager just call the resident once a month or once every other month just to check on them. That might be something
Hmm.
that would probably be worth instituting.
Gotcha.
It's this is the thing for property managers. It's hard to create processes based on kind of outliers, and it that kind of is an outlier. So for a property management company to have a process that's just like for 2% or 3% of their portfolio is a little bit more difficult. So you may want to either suggest this to the property manager and see if they can do it, or you yourself as the owner may want to figure out a way that you can do that, if that's something that like you're concerned about.
Interesting. I like it. I like it. So let's talk turkey here. What's the craziest thing Evernest has ever had to deal with in a property management? Like something harebrained screwball that you just wouldn't even believe it if you didn't know it happened.
Oh well. Oh boy. Oh my goodness. There's just Jen. There's too many stories of crazy resident encounters, crazy owner encounters. We had an owner come into office and like losing his mind, and like we literally had to have him restrained and removed out of the office. Like,
Oh my goodness.
oh yeah, 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 yeah. So that was probably 7 or 8 years ago. We've like honestly, we've made mistakes. I mean, everybody makes mistakes, right? And there's
Of
not a
course.
property manager out there that's 100% does it right. We one time rented a property. So we had an owner, they had a really nice condo, and they said, "Hey, we want to rent this for $2,500 a month." And we're like, "Great. That's definitely market rent. We know we can get it. Won't be a problem."
Mhm.
And so we started to do a little bit of pre-leasing, and somebody who was relatively new got involved. And when they asked the a potential resident, said, "Hey, I'm interested in this property. How much is it going to rent for?" Because it wasn't public yet. The person on our team told them $1,500 and
Oh,
sent them a lease with $1,500.
oh
And guess what?
no.
That person signed that lease so fast
Of
because
course
they
they
knew it
did.
was about it was $1,000 under market, and they're like signed, and we got it, and we were
Done.
like,
Uh-oh.
so we went back to the resident, and we said, "Hey, new person made a mistake. It wasn't really on the market yet. We'd like to redo this, for it's really $2,500." And they said, "Nope."
Yeah.
And so we were like, we had to honor it. So what did we have to do? We had to pay the owner out of our pocket an
Yeah.
extra $1,000 a month to get them to the 2,500 because that was true market rent. So that's
Right.
just it's just kind of stuff like that that happens every once in a while. And honestly, the hardest part about this business is growing a team like we have. So now we have
Mhm.
over 500 people on our team, and it's very difficult. It was easier when we were all in one office and everybody knew what was going on. Now that we have 500 people, it's much more difficult to lead and to cascade messages and the communication. And so that also comes with its challenges as we grow.
Of course, because you're all in
Just like
different.
any business.
Yeah, no, and you're all in different time zones and,
Uh-huh.
all in different locations, right? Because
And different
every
markets, right?
and different markets. So you've got
Yeah,
different
right.
states, different municipalities, different counties, even.
Different
And so,
laws.
right, different laws that are
Yeah,
applicable or different, how the rent increases work. I mean, every single
correct.
thing that you've got to know about these, not just states or provinces, I've got Canadian listeners as well. It's really geographic, like nitty
Yeah,
gritty geographic specific. So Evernest
yeah.
is pretty incredible. I've actually had an encounter with Evernest because Mike and I are real estate investors, and so we're
Hmm.
looking at different properties across the U.S. particularly, and we've had a couple of Evernest proposals that we've looked at as well. We have
Oh,
not closed
nice.
on any of those yet, but that's actually when Krista contacted me and she said you've got to talk to Spencer from Evernest. I already knew about your company because I had already been working with your
Well,
company with the
great. That's
proposal.
great.
So, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, Spencer, is if a listener is interested in contacting you,
Uh-huh.
how do they do that?
Yeah, they can reach out to us on our website. We have the main corporate website is evernest.co. That's evernest.co. And if they want to reach out to me personally, they can email me ssutton@evernest.co. I think they can check out our YouTube page. We have a couple. We have a podcast page that is about the Evernest real estate investor, and then we just have a normal YouTube page where I create content, hopefully to help landlords and help real estate investors. Whether they hire us or not is perfectly fine. We want to give back as much good information as we possibly can.
I love it. Any parting thoughts?
I think that does it. I just would say, and I know you do a fantastic job of educating real estate investors and landlords, and just want to say thanks for all that you do for
Oh,
the community. And if there's anything, like if anybody has any questions specifically related to property management that I can help with, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Just shoot me an
oh,
email. But again, Jen, thanks for everything you do.
absolutely. Oh, my pleasure. So happy to have you on today, Spencer. Thanks.
Thanks, Jen.